He grabbed her wrist and dragged her toward the bathroom, but when the door opened, her husband was already there. And he wasn't just anyone, he was the man this city feared most. It was another cold night at Valera. The kind of restaurant where rich men argued over wines older than their wives. Amara, a black waitress with quiet grace and tired eyes, balanced a tray full of crystal glasses as jazz floated through the air. She worked fast, precise, and polite, the kind of professionalism that made guests smile but made her new manager, Victor Hale, twitch with resentment. Victor had arrived 2 weeks ago, and since then, every shift had become a test of patience. He strutted through the dining room like he owned it, barking orders, correcting her tone, and calling her girl even after she corrected him. Amara never snapped back. She couldn't afford to, but that didn't mean she didn't notice. Table 9 said their pacing was slow. Victor said sharply, stepping in front of her as she delivered a steak, "I'm following the course timing." "Sir," she replied evenly. Victor smirked. "Sir, that's cute. Don't get clever, Amara, just serve." She smiled politely, the kind that said, "You can't break me, but you can try." Then she turned away, leaving him standing there in his own arrogance. By 10 p.m., the restaurant hummed with laughter and wine. Amara carried a tray back to the kitchen when she felt a hand clamp around her wrist. "Come here," Victor hissed, pulling her toward the back hallway. She froze. "Let go, Mr. Hale. Don't play innocent," he sneered, dragging her toward the staff bathroom. "You think you can embarrass me in front of customers?" The corridor lights flickered, cold, fluorescent. "Let go," Amara said again, louder this time, but before he could push the door open, it swung wide on its own. Standing there was a man in a charcoal suit, tall, calm, and radiating quiet danger. Marcus, Amara's husband. And though no one at Valera knew it, he wasn't just any husband. He was the kind of man whose name whispered through the city's underworld like a warning. He looked at Victor's hand on her wrist, then up at Victor's eyes. "Take your hand off my wife," Marcus said softly. Victor froze, confused. "You're what?" Marcus stepped forward. His presence filled the hallway like smoke. "You heard me. Step back." Victor released her instantly. His voice cracked. "Sir, this is just a mistake," Marcus finished. "One you'll regret repeating." He looked at Amara gently. "You okay, love?" She nodded. "I am now." Marcus turned back to Victor, voice still calm. "You thought she was alone. You were wrong." And without another word, he pulled out his phone. The camera light flashing in Victor's pale face. "Let's start documenting what managerial conduct looks like tonight," Victor stammered. "Sir, please." But Marcus didn't answer. He just smiled, slow, quiet, deadly. Amara walked back toward the dining room, her hands still trembling, but her heart steady. At the bar, her coworker, Jenna, whispered, "You okay?" Amara nodded faintly. "It's handled," and it was because the man she married never raised his voice. He just made sure no one ever forgot what respect looked like. The hallway was silent. Too silent Victor's pulse thundered in his ears. But Marcus's voice stayed calm, low, and terrifyingly measured. "I said," Marcus repeated, "take your hand off her." Victor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He did as he was told, stepping back like a man realizing too late that he had just touched fire. Amara slipped her wrist free and brushed her sleeve down, her composure unbroken. "Thank you," she said softly, and with one look from Marcus, she understood she should leave. When the restaurant door swung closed behind her, Marcus turned back to Victor, and for the first time in his life, the manager understood what real power looked like. Marcus stepped closer, his shoes barely whispering against the tile. "Do you know who she is?" he asked. Victor tried to smile, his confidence cracking. She's an employee. I manage her shift." Marcus nodded slowly. "No, you manage schedules, tables, and tips. She manages dignity. And tonight, you tried to take that from her." Victor blinked, stammering, "I didn't mean it was a misunderstanding." Marcus tilted his head. "No misunderstanding. Just arrogance." He slid his phone from his pocket again, pressing record. State your name. Victor hesitated. Sir, please, your name, Marcus repeated, voice sharp enough to slice air. Victor Hale, he whispered. Marcus's tone softened, almost kind. Good. Now, say what you did. I grabbed her arm. Why she wasn't following directions, Victor muttered. Directions, Marcus echoed, nodding. And dragging a woman toward a locked bathroom was part of your management training. Victor swallowed hard. It wasn't like that. Marcus took one step forward. Victor flinched. It's exactly like that. You think your uniform gives you power. It doesn't. It just hides your weakness. He lowered the phone slowly. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Hale. You're going to walk into that office. Pack your things and disappear before I decide to let the law handle it. Victor's voice trembled. The law. Marcus smiled faintly. You're lucky I'm talking about police. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Amara's hands trembled as she poured water for table 9. Jenna brushed past her, whispering, He's still back there. Amara nodded slightly. He's calm. Jenna exhaled. Calm. That's worse. Amara gave a half smile. For Victor, yes. Back in the hallway, Victor's mind raced. He'd heard the rumors stories about a quiet man named Marcus who handled betrayal with eerie patience. No shouting. No chaos. Just outcomes he didn't want to believe them. Until now. Please, Victor said finally, his voice cracking. I'll apologize to her. I'll explain. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You'll do more than apologize. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the dining room. You'll walk out there, in front of your staff, and tell them exactly what you did. Out loud, Victor froze. What? No, Marcus's gaze hardened. Or, I send this recording to your corporate office, your investors, and every single food critic in the city. Your choice. Victor's face turned white. You can't, I already did. Marcus interrupted, holding up his phone. Consider this. Uploaded insurance. Victor's breath came short and uneven. He looked toward the exit like a trapped animal. Go, Marcus said softly. Make it right. Or make it worse. Either way, I'm watching. A few minutes later, as laughter echoed from the dining room, Victor stepped onto the restaurant floor, his face pale, his hands shaking. Every waiter and hostess paused mid-task. He cleared his throat. Attention, everyone, he said weakly. Conversations quieted. Behaved inappropriately toward an employee tonight. I've crossed a line I shouldn't have. Jenna's mouth fell open. Amara froze. Victor's eyes darted toward Marcus, who leaned casually against the wall near the bar, silent. Expression unreadable. I want to apologize to Amara, Victor continued, voice cracking. It was wrong. I was wrong. The silence afterward was thick enough to taste. Marcus gave a single nod. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward the door. Outside, cold air hid his face. Amara followed him out moments later. You didn't have to do all that, she said softly. Marcus smiled faintly. No, I did, because silence is how men like him survive, and tonight, he learned what it sounds like when the world finally listens. Amara looked up at him, her eyes soft but proud. You didn't touch him. Marcus chuckled quietly. Didn't have to. Fear does my work for me. They stood together beneath the restaurant sign. Snowflakes melting on her lashes, and for the first time that night, Amara didn't feel small, she felt seen. By morning, Valera felt different. The air that once smelled of champagne and truffle oil now carried the faint scent of fear. News traveled faster than espresso through the staff. The story of what Victor had done and who Amara's husband really was spread through whispers, each retelling more cautious than the last. No one spoke Marcus's name aloud. They didn't have to. Power like his didn't need to be introduced. It announced itself by what it left behind: silence, correction, consequence. Victor Hale didn't show up that morning, but by noon his name had already disappeared from the employee roster. His office was locked, His emails bounced back with an automated message. Position vacant. The entire upper management pretended it was a voluntary resignation. But everyone who had seen Marcus's calm stare last night knew better. In his penthouse apartment overlooking the river, Marcus sat at his desk, black coffee steaming in his hand. He wasn't celebrating, he was reading. On the laptop before him were corporate files, investment documents, ownership records, HR memos, all sent to him overnight by people who owed him quiet favors. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Victor had a history. 3 formal complaints buried under resolved privately. 2 NDAs paid out by the company. 1 pattern too familiar to ignore. Marcus leaned back in his chair and whispered, "You've been busy, Mr. Hailed." He closed the laptop and made a call. A deep voice answered, "Boss." "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "Make sure every restaurant he's ever managed gets this file. Discreetly, no names attached. Copy that. And call the investors at Valera," Marcus continued. "Tell them I'm buying 40% of the shares. The rest will fall into place once they realize who I am." There was a pause. "Sir, you're taking over the place." Marcus smiled faintly. "No, I'm taking responsibility for the place that let this happen." That afternoon, Amara returned to work. The moment she walked through the door, the staff stood straighter. No one said anything, but respect had a way of showing itself in the small things: clean tables, quiet smiles, and no more side glances. Jenna hugged her quickly. "You good?" Amara nodded. "Better than good." The new acting manager approached nervously. "Mrs. Cole." Amara almost laughed. "Just Amara, please." He cleared his throat. "The owner, asked me to give you this." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a simple note. "This isn't about revenge. It's about correction. Finish your shift, love. Dinner's at 8. Mamara smiled softly, tucking the note into her apron. Across the city, Victor sat in a cramped motel room. Still in the same clothes from the night before, his phone buzzed with missed calls, texts from investors, and one headline that turned his stomach cold: Valera management reshuffle after allegations of misconduct. He turned on the TV. The news anchor's voice cut through the static. Sources confirm that high-profile entrepreneur Marcus Cole has acquired major shares in Valera Group following reports of internal abuse claims. Victor's heart stopped. That name, Cole. He whispered it like a prayer and a curse. Marcus Cole wasn't just a man. He was a network, a myth wrapped in money and mystery. Everyone in the city knew what it meant when Marcus Cole got involved. No shouting, no threats, just endings. At dinner that night, Amara found Marcus waiting in a private booth at a quiet jazz bar. The air smelled of leather, whiskey, and calm. He stood when she entered. "How was work?" She smiled. "Quiet," he nodded. "That's how it should be." She slid into the seat across from him. "You didn't have to buy the restaurant." Marcus chuckled softly. "Didn't buy it for them. Bought it for you, so no one ever forgets who really runs the place." Amara looked at him, half proud, half worried. "You can't fix every wrong in the world." Marcus reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I know," he said quietly, "but I can fix the ones that cross my doorstep." The band began to play a low, slow tune, something about lost love and found peace. Marcus lifted his glass slightly. To justice without noise, Amara raised hers. And to men who listen before they act, their glasses clinked softly, a sound small enough to be missed, but powerful enough to echo. Mid-story CTA for YouTube viewer retention at 50% mark. If you're still watching, remember this power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply walks in quietly and changes everything. Stay with this story till the end, because what Marcus does next proves that justice doesn't always need revenge, just the right hands. By the next morning, whispers had turned into headlines. Valera under new ownership, power shift in hospitality industry. Marcus Cole expands his reach. The same investors who once brushed off staff complaints, now called emergency meetings. The same chefs who feared Victor's arrogance now worked in nervous silence. No one mentioned the incident directly, but everyone knew it had something to do with the waitress, the one who walked with quiet grace, the one whose husband had shown up without a word and changed everything overnight. Amara didn't like attention. She never had. So when she arrived at work that day, she kept her eyes down, her steps steady. "Morning, Amara," said Jenna from the bar, smiling wider than usual. "You're famous." Amara frowned. "Don't start." Jenna held up her phone. "Too late. The news says the restaurant's new owner is a silent investor driven by personal values. Sound familiar?" Amara sighed. "He doesn't stop, does he?" Jenna grinned. "Your husband just made sure half the city's managers think twice before raising their voices." "Good," Amara said softly. "Maybe someone else gets to feel safe at work tonight." Meanwhile, across town, Marcus sat in a black sedan outside a corporate tower. His driver adjusted the rearview mirror nervously. "You sure you don't want to go up, boss?" Marcus shook his head. "No need." The message already arrived. He stared out at the glass facade where the Valera Group logo gleamed. Behind those windows, meetings were happening, panicked ones. Executives arguing about reputational damage. Public relations, shareholder statements. Marcus didn't need to be there to know the script. He'd written it before. "I don't destroy businesses," he murmured. "I correct them." The driver said nothing, but nodded once because that was Marcus Cole's code. That evening, Amara arrived home early. Their penthouse felt quiet, filled with the scent of fresh lilies and soft jazz humming from the kitchen. Marcus stood by the window. Sleeves rolled, tie loosened, the skyline reflected against the glass, tall, flawless, and untouchable. Much like the man himself. "You've been busy," she said, walking over. He turned slightly. "You heard?" "Everyone heard," she said. "Even people I've never met are sending thank you notes." He chuckled softly. Then maybe the city needed a reminder. She crossed her arms. A reminder or a warning? Marcus turned fully, his gaze serious now. "You think I went too far?" "I think you always walk that line too icily," she replied. "You call it correction. Others might call it control." He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but I didn't touch him. Didn't shout. Didn't threaten. I just took his power away, the same way he tried to take yours." Amara softened. "I know, and I'm grateful. But Marcus, you can't keep saving me like this. Someday, you have to let the world handle its monsters." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but not when they touch what's mine." She rolled her eyes, but her heart melted anyway. "You'll never change." "I already have," he said quietly. "You just don't see it yet." Later that night, Marcus met with 3 men in a dimly lit lounge. They weren't suited gangsters, they were businessmen, lawyers, and financiers. Power dressed differently these days. One of them, a silver-haired man, leaned forward. "You really bought into That's risky." Marcus swelled his glass slowly. "Not risky, necessary." "You could have ruined him publicly," the man said. "Instead, you let him vanish quietly. Why?" Marcus looked up, his expression unreadable. "Because humiliation fades. Lessons don't." The men exchanged glances. None brave enough to question further. That was how Marcus ruled, not through fear, but understanding that true fear is calm. At home, Amara watched the evening news. The anchor reported, Marcus Cole's latest acquisition is rumored to include new labor ethics reforms in the fine dining industry. She smiled. For all his power, Marcus never sought credit. He wanted results, not applause. When he finally walked in, she turned down the volume. "You're changing more than just restaurants." Marcus sat beside her, sliding an arm around her shoulders. "Maybe, but I only started because of one woman." Amara laughed softly. "You mean me?" He kissed her forehead. "No, your mother. She taught you dignity. You taught me restraint. And both saved my soul tonight." They sat there quietly, watching the skyline shimmer to people who had lived in different worlds. now bound by one principle: power means nothing if it can't protect peace. By Friday, the city had already moved on, at least. That is what the headlines said. But in Victor Hale's world, everything had stopped. His phone had gone silent. His emails, unanswered. The sleek car he once bragged about sat in a parking lot, its payments overdue. He scrolled through his messages, desperate for someone to listen. Every contact that once called him sir now left him on read. His reputation had collapsed faster than he could blink, quietly, completely, and without a single public scandal. That was Marcus Cole's style: no noise, no headlines, just results. In a small diner off Fifth Avenue, Victor sat hunched over a bitter cup of coffee. He looked like a ghost of the man who used to command rooms with arrogance. A voice broke through his thoughts. "You're sitting in my booth?" He looked up. A tall man in a dark coat stood over him, expression calm but unwelcoming. Victor stammered, "Ooh, I'm sorry." The man smirked faintly. "You're Victor Hale, right?" Victor's stomach dropped. "Who's asking?" The man slid a folded envelope across the table. "Consider this. Your severance package." Victor opened it slowly. Inside was a single line. Written in clean black ink: "Justice served quietly, still tastes the same." And beneath it, a signature: MC. Victor froze. Then he laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "So this is it," he muttered. "He didn't just end my job, he ended me." The man shrugged. "No one told you to drag people where they didn't want to go." Then he walked out, leaving Victor alone with the weight of what he'd lost: not money, not status, but his reflection. Meanwhile, at Valera, change was already visible. The restaurant had never felt lighter. Staff smiled again. Music played without tension clinging to the air, and Amara, the woman whose silence had once been mistaken for weakness, now trained new hires with the authority of someone finally seen. Customers noticed, too. They said things like, "This place feels different." And Amara would smile quietly, knowing it wasn't the decor, it was respect. Jenna leaned across the bar one evening. "You know he's never coming back, right?" Amara nodded. "He already left a long time ago, the night he decided I was less than human." Jenna grinned. "And your husband? He's like some sort of legend now." Amara laughed softly. "He doesn't like being called that. He just calls it balance." That weekend, the restaurant hosted a private dinner, a fundraiser for women working in hospitality. Marcus attended quietly, sitting in the corner beside Amara. He didn't speak on stage or seek the spotlight. When the event ended, one of the hosts approached him. "Mr. Cole, I just want to say what you did for It gave people hope." Marcus smiled faintly. "I didn't give them hope. I just reminded them it still existed." The host hesitated. "And Victor Hale?" Marcus's tone was even. "He's learning what silence sounds like when no one's afraid of you anymore." The host nodded slowly. "And Amara?" Marcus glanced at her across the room, laughing softly with a group of young waitresses. The firelight caught her eyes, turning them to gold. "She's the reason I even know what peace looks like," he said quietly. "The rest is just cleanup." Later that night, as they drove home, Amara leaned against him in the car. The city lights passed like constellations of gold. "You know," she said, "people think you're dangerous." Marcus smiled slightly. "They're half right." "You could have ruined him," she continued. "You didn't?" He shrugged. "Why ruin a man when you can teach him what ruins feel like?" Amara chuckled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And people think I'm the saint." Marcus smirked. "You are. I'm just the reminder that saints deserve protection, too." Outside their window, the skyline shimmered, tall, proud, and peaceful. Marcus reached for her hand, fingers intertwining. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything next time someone crosses me." "Let me handle it first," he smiled. "Deal." And in the quiet hum of the car, the city exhaled, a long sigh of balance restored. A week later, the restaurant lights burned softer than usual. The dinner crowd had gone home, leaving only the sound of dishes being stacked and the faint hum of jazz melting into the night. Amara stood by the window, looking out at the empty tables. The same restaurant that had once felt like a battlefield, now felt like peace. Jenna approached, drying her hands on a towel. "You closing tonight?" Amara smiled. "Yeah. I like the quiet." Jenna hesitated. "You ever think about what happened?" "Every day," Amara said simply. "But not with anger. With purpose." Jenna nodded slowly. "He got what he deserved." Amara shook her head. "No. He got what he earned. There's a difference." Later that night, Amara locked up and walked home. The streets shimmered with the reflection of streetlights in the rain. Her footsteps echoed softly, steady, unafraid by the time she reached the penthouse. The clock read nearly midnight. Marcus was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, making tea, not whiskey, not wine, tea, a habit Amara had passed on to him during their calmer days. He glanced up. "Long day." She smiled faintly. "Quiet one. Feels different without him around." Marcus handed her a cup. "Quiet's good. Means the world is finally listening." They stood by the window, steam curling around their hands, watching the city lights blink like distant stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Amara asked after a moment. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Regret what?" "Who you are. What you have to do to keep order." He thought about it. The calls, the deals, the invisible lines of power that held the city together. Then he shook his head slowly. "I regret the noise. But never the reason." She nodded. "You didn't do it for revenge." He looked at her, voice soft. "No, I did it so no other woman has to lower her eyes to a man who confuses cruelty with strength." Amara's lips trembled, not from sadness, but pride. "You're dangerous, Marcus." He smiled faintly. "Only to men who are." The next morning, the Herald Tribune published a front-page story. New initiative: the Coal Foundation launches Safe Shift program protecting workers across the city. The article included photos of Amara standing before a podium, speaking quietly to reporters. Her message was short, but it struck hearts everywhere. Justice isn't about who can shout the loudest, it's about who refuses to stay silent. Marcus read the article over breakfast, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. When she entered the kitchen, he lifted the newspaper. "You went public." "I had to," she said. "If we stay quiet, nothing changes." He folded the paper neatly. "You're braver than I am." She laughed softly. "You're wrong. I just learned from the best." That evening, they attended the first Safe Shift fundraiser, a candlelit dinner attended by hundreds of restaurant workers, journalists, and owners. Amara took the stage briefly to thank everyone. Marcus stood at the back, unnoticed by most, his hands folded as he watched her. When she finished speaking, she walked to him, eyes bright. "You didn't clap," she teased. He smiled. "Didn't want to draw attention." "You never do," she said, resting her head against his shoulder. He looked down at her. "That's because I don't want the spotlight. I want the silence that follows when justice finally speaks for itself." As the night wound down, they stood outside the event hall. The city stretched endlessly around them, alive, loud, chaotic, but between them, everything was still. Amara looked at Marcus. "You know what people will say about you after all this?" Marcus chuckled. "Depends who you ask. They'll say the Mafia boss cleaned up the city one restaurant at a time." He smiled softly. "Then let them talk. Just make sure they remember who taught him how." Amara laughed, a quiet, genuine sound that broke the chill of the night. He wrapped an arm around her, and for the first time in a long time, they both felt something rarer than power: peace. In a world where cruelty often hides behind power, kindness remains the greatest strength. Marcus didn't need to raise his voice, his silence was enough, and Amara didn't need revenge. Her dignity was her weapon. Remember this: justice isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the moment the world finally sees what you stood for all along. If this story moved you, share it, because somewhere tonight, someone like Amara needs to know. Silence can be broken, and respect can be restored.